The patient is unconscious. Electroshock has rendered them still. Their eyelid is gently lifted.
A slender metal instrument, sharp, narrow, roughly the length of a pencil.
It's placed just below the tear duct, a small depression in the orbital bone, right there.
A little resistance, then none.
The operator sweeps left, then right, severing the fibres between the frontal lobes and the thalamus.
Procedure complete. Time elapsed, 7 minutes. No anaesthetic, no consent.
You're listening to Psycho Killer, shocking true crime stories. We're about to delve into the mind of a man who delved into people's minds, literally. He called it a simple operation, a cure for madness, a gift to families torn apart by mental illness.
But as we heard at the end of part 1, Walter Jackson Freeman II performed that operation more than 3,000 times, and at least 100 of his patients didn't survive it.
He wasn't the first to perform a lobotomy, but he was the one who brought it to the mainstream, stripping away the caution, the surgical rigour, even the consent.
We'll trace Freeman's fall from grace, the lives he shattered, the institutions that shielded him, and the legacy of silence he left behind.
And we'll also return in detail to the hair psychopathy checklist to see whether this crusading neurologist was just dangerously deluded or something even darker.
This is Psycho Killer, shocking true crime stories.